Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. Thank you everybody that submitted questions on my Game of Thrones video this week. Now that we've gotten through Star Wars business, we can get back to Game of Thrones. There's actually been some really cool stuff happening on this set. They're circling back around and doing plots that they skipped in season 5. I'm going to try to avoid as many big spoilers as possible. There have been a lot of pictures from this set, mostly surprising things because there are certain areas where they filmed scenes that take place in vastly different locations in A Song of Ice and Fire. Like last year, a lot of the Dorne scenes were shot in Spain, and some of those areas doubled for places where they shot Daenerys' scenes. It's just a way for the production team to maximize efficiency. So the other day I saw this picture of Cersei, which I'm not going to post here just because it might be kind of spoilery, with short hair, talking to a character that she had no business talking to this early in the story. Just to give you guys like a broad idea, like if you really want to read the books and you're not sure what to read before season 6, just go back and read book 4, read A Feast for Crows. There'll still be some minor changes to the plot, but it seems like they're going to be changing Jaime's story less than they changed it in season 5. Like him going to Dorne was a much bigger change than anything that they might change in season 6. So they're just circling back around, you're going to see some familiar characters. Reread book 4, you have plenty of time. Oh, and a lot of you guys have asked me about like the potentially leaked scripts. I've tried to avoid those because they're kind of circumspect. But like I said, they're circling back around and grabbing a lot of old book plots that they skipped over. So those things, in those leaked scripts or potentially leaked scripts, I think those are the true things. The other things are wildly speculatory. So I'm not really intending on doing a special video just for those leaked scripts because they could just be complete fan fiction. But on to questions, here we go. Just careful for spoilers for everything that's happened on the show so far. Next question, Miss Lim asks, I wanted to ask you, which character do you think is gonna make it till the end after all the wars are over? Well, I mean, I definitely think that Sansa's gonna make it, just because she seems like the kind of character who's getting that arc where they overcome struggle and become this fully actualized human being. She has a long way to go. They really drug her through the mud in season 5, so hopefully we start to see her act with some more agency in season 6. But generally, I do think that Jon Snow and Daenerys will crawl out alive. I mean, Jon Snow isn't gonna die once, then come back just to die again. And I would be really happy to see Cersei, Jaime, and Tyrion live. Tyrion tends to be a lot of people's favorite characters, with good reason. He's an amazing character, but Cersei is just getting more and more interesting the crazier she gets. I cannot wait to see where she goes. But your question's so big, it's really hard to say like every single character. There's so many characters in A Song of Ice and Fire. Really, I think the funniest example of a character surviving, like just being the cockroach that won't die, would be Walder Frey. He just outlives everyone. He's already one of the oldest characters in the kingdom, just being super evil, just being the worst person imaginable. Next question, Jonathan asks, speaking of the Danes, do you think there's any possibility that Jon isn't a Targaryen? I mean, I know the books and the show hinted it hard. What about Jon as the Sword of the Morning? Dawn seemed to fit well with the Azor Ahai imagery. The only weird part is that it assumes Jon giving up Longclaw, which is weird. And then number 2, do you think that there's any credence to the theory that the White Walkers and the Great Other are related to or serve the Old Gods? Or do you think that the Old Gods and the Lord of Light are in opposition since Melisandre and the Bloodraven seem to espouse such different views on darkness and light? Well, first question first. I do think that Jon is the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna, so I do think he's a Targaryen. But George R. R. Martin did say that Dawn, the actual sword, is waiting at Starfall for the next Sword of the Morning to arise. I don't think that Jon is going to lose Longclaw anytime soon, so I think that will be the sword that he fights with. So I think that that's just leaving room for another Sword of the Morning to come along. I think that Jon fits nicely into the Prince Who Was Promised prophecy. He fits a lot of descriptions that the character seems like it's surfacing, like this Azor Ahai character. But I don't think that like every mysterious person that's supposed to come along in the narrative is going to be Jon Snow. I still kind of think the idea that Azor Ahai and Lightbringer are more metaphorical things. Like even if the Red God imbues Melisandre with the energy to resurrect Jon Snow, like even if he makes that possible, really he's just selecting Jon as a person of interest in the history of Planetos. Just like Thoros of Myr was able to resurrect Beric. Like yeah, Beric wasn't necessarily Azor Ahai. I just think that it's a title that gets passed down. Like there's no one sword that is like the ultimate sword. In the books right now, the leading candidate to come back and take Dawn, become the next Sword of the Morning, is Edric Dayne. The show hasn't done him yet, so it could totally cut Dawn out of the storyline. Like it could totally cut this House Dayne out of the storyline, not including any Arthur Dayne flashbacks. To answer your second question though, I do think that some gods are the same god. Like the many-faced god is also probably the stranger. There's probably some overlap with different people interpreting different gods in different ways. Supernatural creatures exist, magic exists, so it stands to reason that some of these gods actually exist, although I'd be willing to bet that some of them are probably false. Not including the Great Other and the Red God, I do think that they're two separate entities. It'd be kind of cliche if they turned out to be the same god, like different aspects of the same god. So until we get more evidence from George R. R. Martin in the books, I'm choosing to think of the Red God as his own entity that exists in opposition to the Great Other, who's his own entity, who they both exist in opposition to the old gods. I think of the old gods as being more of like gods of nature in general, like you would worship the planet. But I think George R. R. Martin will probably spell this out in Winds of Winter and Dream of Spring in greater detail. Most of that information will probably have to come from people like the Blood Raven, like highly learned people that you know have lived for a long time, or like the Children of the Forest. Next question though, Matthew asks, do you think that Dawn will ever reappear in the books or on the show? It'll definitely reappear in the books. On the TV show, I think we'll probably only see it in a Tower of Joy flashback. Next question, Ethan asks, unrelated to Jon Snow's parentage, do you think that the Children of the Forest could play a part in the future war to come with the White Walkers? Yeah, I would definitely say yeah. They were a big part of ending the Long Night. The ones that are still alive will probably help out. The way the War for the Dawn is being sold, even though we've gotten hints of it from Melisandre, and we just seen the first big battle with the White Walkers, I think it's going to be a war that's going to involve the entire planet, although most of it's going to take place in Westeros, just because that's where the White Walkers are. But the way the books explain the Children of the Forest in present day is that their numbers have greatly receded. They're slowly dying off. It's kind of like the elves, Elrond's people, going to the Grey Havens during Lord of the Rings. They slowly leave this place. They kind of transition to this otherworldly life. Next question though, Frank asks, is it likely that Jon being a Targaryen won't matter? He's probably going to rule the North after his legitimization. Well, we don't necessarily know that he's been legitimized. I think everybody's talking about, Robb Stark's will. Maybe he legitimized Jon Snow. What would have to happen for that is people would have to acknowledge that in a public way. I don't think that it'd even be necessary for him to be legitimized, for people to rally behind him. I think once the Lords of the North that hate the Boltons find out that Jon Snow survived death, he's still alive, and Sansa's on the run, they would look to him to rally a force to get rid of the Boltons. We know Littlefinger has an interest in the North. He definitely wants to use the forces of the Vale to help get rid of the Boltons, but it sounds like the North is largely going to be taking care of itself. So if Jon led a successful campaign, I don't think that they would just kick him to the curb. They would probably be like, okay, now you get to take over Winterfell. They would either mutually acknowledge him as a Stark, or if they wanted to go the legal route, they would compel Tommen to legitimize him. I mean, if Jon really wanted to, he could name himself the next King of Winter and just, tell anybody to screw off if they didn't like it. Like, what are you gonna do? You come up here? I'm essentially unkillable. They tried and the Red God brought me back. What are you gonna do about it? I think Jon potentially being a Targaryen just gives him more legitimacy in the eyes of the other nobles of Westeros. They're like, oh, he comes from royal blood, and he's unkillable. Maybe we should listen to what he has to say. I think it'll just be easier for him to rally support. Next question, Annie asks, there's a fan theory that Ashara's kid is Daenerys, not Snow. I think fueled by the fact that Sir Barristan thinks of Ashara when he sees Daenerys' eyes, because they both had purple eyes. George R. R. Martin might be throwing us off a little bit. And then you say, Dawn is made from a meteorite. I've never encountered a space rock that would make a sword milk white. And then a long time question, how did the show's writers justify marrying Sansa to Ramsay since Tyrion is not even rumored dead? Even based on non-consummation, shouldn't an annulment of her first marriage have been produced at some point to make her second marriage legal? Does Littlefinger have the power to do that? Okay, all great questions, so I'll start with the first one first. There are definitely a lot of coincidences, but I think especially with eyes, there's just a lot of people that share some common DNA. So I do think that Daenerys is still the daughter of the Mad King. That's why they're trying to make her seem like she was going a little bit crazy during season 5. Like maybe she's going to set the entire city on fire, like her father tried to do once with her dragons. So even though the TV show changes a lot from the books, they definitely try to allude to the same things that the books are alluding to, like, head in the same direction. So I haven't seen any compelling evidence that Daenerys is the child of anyone else but the Mad King. But that's taking the text of the book and taking the show both into context. If you go just based on book evidence, you tend to produce different theories than if you include the stuff that the show has done. For your second question about Dawn being the glowing space rock sword, I'm not a scientist, but I think that George R. R. Martin just wanted to make it a little bit more special. So you could say that it has some supernatural properties. You could say that it's just a space rock that doesn't exist in real life. I think it's a conceit just to make the sword seem bigger, badder, better. And about Sansa and Ramsay, so Littlefinger, whenever he was talking to the Boltons about getting married, he said the marriage was never consummated, like you said in your question. I think her marriage to Tyrion was probably swept under the rug off camera. It probably just happened sometime in between episodes. But because all the characters lie so much, you could make the case that she's still technically married to Tyrion. So, until they say it on the show, you could argue either way. Next question, Heather says, fire cannot kill a dragon. If Jon Snow's a Targaryen, then he is a dragon, and I bet the Night's Watch will have a hard time burning his body. So I think this is more of an offhanded remark, but I wanted to use it because a lot of people are always asking about Daenerys being burnt by fire in the show, changing things from the books. Technically, Targaryens not being burned by fire is a myth. George R. Martin explained that at the end of book 1, when she walks through the fire and comes out with the hatched dragons, that was blood magic in play, so that was a special case. Usually people arguing, saying that Daenerys cannot be burnt by fire, say that she got in a really hot bathtub in that first episode in the pilot. Steaming bathwater and flames are two completely different things. Dan and Dave, as much as they change from the books, I think every once in a while they just want to make something visually seem really cool, and it's really easy to read too much into situations like that, especially when you have a character like her brother who just won't stop talking about how he is the dragon. You don't want to wake the dragon, like he keeps referring back to dragons. The best example in the books of Targaryens not being immune to fire is the tragedy at Summerhall, where Egg from Duncan Egg and a big portion of his family all died in a completely normal fire, like a normal house fire. And yes, I know Daenerys is standing really close to Drogon here when he is like just breathing jets of fire, but I don't think she's standing close enough to get burnt. Like were she standing closer, it would completely singe her hair. So just based on what George R. Martin has said, Targaryens can totally be burnt by fire, unless you're invoking some sort of magic. Thank you so much everyone for submitting questions. These are always a ton of fun to do. And congratulations to this week's book giveaway winner, MX Zeal. You win a copy of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Just be sure to private message me on the back end of my channel so I can get your contact info. So there's still quite a bit of filming left to do in season 6, so we might get some more news from the set, but because they're getting into like the last couple of episodes, they should be done filming sometime in November, and there was rampant spoilers last year, so I'll try to tiptoe around as many spoilers as possible. But if there's anything you guys want me to do for my next bonus video, just let me know in the comments. There's a couple other videos I'm trying to catch up on before the weekend, and I'm still moving to my new apartment. I haven't moved my set yet, so once I do, I'll totally do a room tour video. While you guys wait for all that stuff to post, you can click here to learn all about Ashara Dane's history in the books, and you can click here to watch the Star Wars trailer again, like 5 more times. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.